Hey guys, a brand new event has just been announced. It is the Fusion event for Isolde. The calendar is right behind me here, so we'll go over this in detail in just a minute. But first, let's talk about the hero up for grabs, which is Isolde. She is an epic defender for the North faction. She is overall a pretty good hero. She gains scaling defense based on the number of enemies blocked, and you may note this stacks up to 5 times. This is interesting, of course, because normally defenders only have a block value of 3, as you can see right here. However, Isolde's ultimate increases her block value by 1, allowing her to block 4 enemies at a time. The 5 you can get from having Olag's Wall, which is a specific defender artifact, a myth artifact. So she's really good. Having extra block is great. Quickly to go over her skills, she does an AoE slash every 7 attacks. Not a big deal as she's a defender. When activated, her ultimate increases the block value for ally heroes within range by 1. And it also inflicts physical damage and magical damage mitigation. So not just herself, but also people around her gain a increased block value, and they also reduce the damage they take. This can be increased up to 30% damage reduction, and the duration will go up to 15 seconds at max skill up, which is pretty good. As you can tell, she's obviously a Gear Raid 2 hero, and her ultimate rage cap can be reduced quite low with skill ups as well. Every 30 seconds, her passive, the Northern Guard, will grant allies to her left and right, as well as herself, a shield equal to 30% of her max HP, and the shield increases by 10% for every 1 block value increased of Isolde. So if you have her ultimate active, then it will be an extra 10%. If you have the Olag's Wall artifact, it will be another 10%. So a really good shield, and of course with skill ups, the extra shield increases by 4%, and the base shield will increase by 12%. So a very powerful shield indeed. So I think her max is around 64-65% of her max HP as a shield, which is just amazing in Gear Raid 2. For sure, it's only the people next to her, specifically on her left and right, but you can use this to amazing effect. I do have an epic only Gear Raid 2 stage 19 video, and Isolde was the only reason that team worked. The only reliable way, I say reliable, it was tricky, but the only way to get shields to keep people alive through the shrieks, which you'll undoubtedly get to. So, besides that, she is of course a North Lord. 10% stat bonus is great. She also applies an effect. Periodically, allies will gain a 20% HP shield for 20 seconds. The more North allies in the team, the more frequently this takes place. So that's it. That's the overview of Isolde. She's a solid defender. She's not one of the best defenders, but she's great to have. You really do want to pick up Epic Lords where you can, because it's just nice to have the stat bonus on command. 10% extra stats can go a long way in a lot of content. And additionally, her shielding powers with her passive and the block values and damage mitigation from her ultimate can really help out, especially in Gear Raid 2. If you get her first awakening, then her ultimate will also grant her a shield based on her block value, so she'll have other ways to gain shielding. Her second awakening is just some health. Her third awakening will increase her attack by 5% of her HP. She's not going to really do much damage, so it's probably okay if you're early, but an Awakened 3 Isolde is probably not something you have early. 5% damage reductions is nice at Awakened 4, and at Awakened 5, 2 less to proc her AoE attack. Again, it's not something I really care about on a defender, but the first awakening is really nice. So that's Isolde. So now let's talk about her calendar, as you can see right here. I've pulled this up on the screen. So the event to fuse Isolde is on the 28th of July. So there's only a few days between now and then, and it does run until the 15th of August. That means we have 19 days for this event. This event and similar events have been on the Forerunner server in the past. I do actually have videos of them, so you can check them out if you're curious. It's going to be the same format as this video, but do note that the previous events did have a shorter duration. I noted this one is 19 days. The previous Isolde fusion we had back at the start of the year was only 17 days. So we do have a couple more days, which is quite nice. The most important things to look at with this calendar is it requires 75 of these shards to fuse Isolde. There is a total of 120 shards up for grabs. You may have noticed that in the Oracle's Trials, you do get bonus rewards if you podium. The first 1, 2, and 3 spaces get additional rewards, and you'll get a lot more shards if you manage to do that. It varies per Oracle's Trial and how competitive your bracket is, but it can be up to 15 shards for placing first, so that goes a long way. That means that generally it's not too hard to complete this event, because as you can see, there's a lot of shards up for grabs. There's 120 shards up for grabs, not including the fact that if you are somehow able to podium in any of these things, you'll get a lot more shards. So with that, let's talk about the actual events first, and then we'll talk about the Oracle's Trials. You will not be able to achieve all of these. Some of them are quite tight and quite difficult to do. Some of them are really easy to do. So let's get into it. Let's start with the events. So let's go over the events one by one. First off, we are starting with, I'm going to talk about them as categories rather than in order. We'll go top down as they are. As you can see, top down, different ones at a time. So it starts Spiritual Altar and finishes Jewel of Champions for the event section. So Spiritual Altar, what is it? Well, it is a summoning event. You summon heroes, you get rewards. The rewards tend to be really good. Lots of ancient summoning crystals, which you can use later. They are not available right now, so don't worry about them if they are in the event. That currency will open up for use in future. If they're not in the event, then there will most likely be a load of legendary skill crystals, which are super valuable because they're really hard to come by now. So there are 2 of the Spiritual Altars. Each one spans 3 days, Friday to Sunday, because it's a summoning event window. It is highly likely that both of these windows will be 10 times hero summoning events and not 2 times. We've just had a 2 and a 10 times this weekend, so I would be surprised if both of those fall on 2 times weekends. If they do, then it's pretty good to summon on, of course, but because there is a week gap in between both of them, they will both be the same. So either they're both 10x or they're both 2x. If they're both 10x, then I would suggest strongly avoiding it altogether. You want legendaries. Previously, this was split into 2. It could be split into 3. Either this will be 5 and 5, so 2 rewards of 5 staggered throughout the amounts, and the second one will be very, very hard to get unless you're spending or you've saved a massive amount of summons to pull legendaries, basically. Or it will be split into 3, and there'll be a 2, 3, and 5 reward. So hopefully we can get some of those, but we will assume for the sake of this that you are unable to get them. Either it's a 10x event and you don't want to summon, or you just don't have enough prepared to do it. So I think these are the hardest to get because it's a lot of summons required with not much time to save for them. So you can kind of assume you're not going to get these. Maybe you'll get 5 or 10 in total from the Spiritual Altars. So next up is the Corridor of Glory. Corridor of Glory is an event where you need to level up, star up, and promote heroes. I will put up on screen an existing Corridor of Glory so you can see how many points there are and how much you need in order to actually achieve this. As you can see, it requires a massive amount of leveling up, starring up, and promoting heroes. So if you want to achieve this one, you're going to need to save fodder, buy some of the fodder from the Dwarven Association, and probably farm XP if you want to have the materials to actually level up heroes. So yeah, this is going to be available only once in the event, so it's only worth 10, but it's quite tricky. It does require a bunch, but something to bear in mind. We have the whole of this week coming up, as well as most of next week to save up some resources, so it's not too bad, and it might line up with the 2x weekend as well, so we'll see how that goes. Generally, Corridor of Glory is not too bad to do so long as you've actually prepared and saved up some resources. So next up, by going down one again, we are on the Brave Conquest. This one is worth a total of 20 points. There are 4 of them. Brave Conquest simply requires you to do artifact and gear raids. This will probably be either in 2 separate rewards of 2 and 3 or just in a single reward of 5. It's not the hardest to do. You're basically going to be farming gear as much as you can anyway, so these are pretty much 3 points up for grabs. So far, Corridor of Glory and Brave Conquest should all be quite easy to get. And we'll go over this later, but the Oracle's Trials do kind of line up with the Brave Conquest. If you look down the table, you can see that you'll kind of be multitasking anyway, so these are pretty easy. A tip for Brave Conquest is Artifact Material Raid does actually give you a better value per stamina usually. The problem is at the stage we're at in the game and the stage you'll be at through most of this, it's not going to be super efficient to farm Artifact Material Raid as it's super hard. You really want to be clearing stage 18 if you're farming it at all, because it's just generally a massive stamina dump of a stage. So I would probably just stick to farming the gear raids, and if one of these is running out and you haven't got all the rewards, then swap to farming Artifact Material Raid perhaps, but do some maths and make sure that it's worth it. Generally, I would not recommend touching the lower stages of the Artifact Material Raid. So yeah, I would generally suggest sticking in the highest gear raid you can farm in order to do these Brave Conquests. So next up we have Tales of the Smith. Tales of the Smith is an event that you progress by leveling up gear, pretty simply, and yeah, it's quite a tricky one actually. Surprisingly, it lasts for 4 days each. There are 2 of them, each one is worth 5 shards. Again, likely split either 2, 3 or just 5 up front. I'm imagining they will split these as 2 and 3. And yeah, you just have to upgrade gear. You get more points based on the rarity of the gear, and you only get points by upgrading them to the stat milestones of 4, 8, 12 and 16. So you can take gear to 15 or take it to 11 or something and leave it there until the event strikes, and then just get the last notch in order to get the actual points for the event. Generally speaking, my advice is to have 5 million gold prepared for this event because it is super expensive. And just a quick reminder that there is an event shop. If you click over here on the right side, Server Launch Festival, 10 days remaining, redeem shop. Buy as much of this gold as you can get. This will massively help with this event. There are 2 of these available for 10 points in total, and they should be totally doable, mainly because of the massive amount of gold this event will give us. So that's not too bad. And finally, there is Jewel of Champions. Jewel of Champions just requires you to complete arena matches. You get points for winning, losing, and drawing. However, in order to actually succeed this event and get the maximum reward, you need 200 points. You only get 5 points for a win. you can get about 10 arena attacks in a day if you do the 5 in the morning and 5 in the evening. So if you win every single attack for 4 days and 10 per day, that will give you 200 points. So it's pretty tight. However, if you do look, there is the idle rewards per day. You do get an extra 2 permits per day. So that gives us an extra 8 attacks to play with outside of the standard 10 per day. It's still a bit tricky. You do want to make sure that you're not losing any attacks. So you can choose to drop your ranking artificially before that if you wish to. You don't necessarily have to. Personally, I don't mind just buying 5 extra attacks on the day if I have to get this done. So yeah, Duel of Champions is usually not too bad, but you do need to win the majority of your attacks. Just be patient, wait, and refresh your arena board until you find weak opponents. That's the way I do it if I want to play it safe. So that is the event side of the calendar, the top green half of it. Overall, from all of those, I think the majority of those are quite achievable, especially the Corridor of Glory, Brave Conquest, and Tales of the Smith. The Duel of Champions and especially the Spiritual Altar may be quite hard to do for some people. I think it is well worth considering that you may not get any of the points available in the Spiritual Altar, especially if you don't have many summons saved. And if it is a 10 times weekend on these 2 events, I would strongly suggest just giving them a miss and saving for the next weekend, the weekend in the middle, as there is an Arrival of Heroes event here, which we'll go over in a second. Moving on to the Oracle's Trials, so the second half of the table. The Oracle's Trials are competitive events, as you've seen, as the one behind me you can see. You are competing against other players in order to podium. If you podium, you get extra rewards. So for these Oracle's Trials for the Fusion event, if you can place in the top 3, you will get additional shards, but the shards shown on the calendar are referring to the rewards at the bottom of the screen, as you can see down here. Usually they'll have a shard around here, so around this halfway mark, and then there'll usually be the next set of shards, the second last reward, or sometimes the final reward. Bearing in mind it's only 500 points for getting a legendary hero, but I'll put the points up on the screen. Anyway, we'll go back to the table, and we're starting with Arrival of Heroes. There are 15 shards up for grabs, most likely in blocks of 5 and 10, with 10 being at the end. I would personally suggest saving your summons for this. 15 shards is most of the way towards the 20 available in the 2 Spiritual Altars, and that's all in one event, and the milestone required to get all of those shards should be quite a lot lower than the Spiritual Altars. So I would suggest saving for the Arrival of Heroes in the middle of the event, rather than both Spiritual Altars on either side. It will be very hard to get all the shards from those. I do think it would be much easier to get the ones in the Arrival of Heroes. Once again though, I don't know what the order is of the 10 times and the 2 times. That is up to you when you see it, what your priority is. You may decide you want to summon on the Arrival of Heroes anyway if it is a 10 times event, but we don't know for the time being. For me, I'll probably try and stick to the 2 times events regardless of which ones it falls on. I would just rather have the chances of more legendary heroes. You can see the zigzag though, these do not overlap, they are a week apart. Next up we have the Awakening of Heroes. There are 2 of them worth 10 shards each for a total of 20, and this is basically the same as the Corridor of Glory event, so that means you only have a 2-day gap between the Awakening of Heroes and the first Corridor of Glory, and then a 3-day gap to the second Awakening of Heroes, so it's a bit tight. That's a lot of awakening and a lot of promotions to be having to do. So perhaps it's better to focus on the Oracle's Trials for these as they don't double up. See how you get on with the first one. If you do it and you're fine and you have XP potions and you have fodder, then perhaps you can go through all 3 of them, but definitely be more measured and careful just in case you don't have enough resources for all of them. Generally, I think the Oracle's Trials are a lot easier to complete than the events, so I tend to focus on these. The rewards are lesser on the other rewards outside of just the shards, but it depends what your focus is. I would prefer to win the Oracle's Trials versus the events just because it's less taxing. So next up then we have the Forgotten Palace. This is Gear Raid 3, so you need to farm the stage Gear Raid 3. This does line up with 2 of the Brave Conquests, so that's fine. You can just farm it on the first day and the 3rd and 4th day so that you're doubling up on 2 events. Perhaps use the day in between to farm XP so that you can do the Awakenings and Corridor of Glory. After that we have Mystery of Artifacts. This is Artifact Material Raid. Lost Legacy is Gear Raid 1. And Vault in the Sands is Gear Raid 2. So that pretty much covers the event cycle for this calendar. Overall, from all of the events, the main difficult ones can be the Duel of Champions. If you're not doing too good in Arena, or perhaps these are weeks that you're particularly not good for, then that can be quite tough to win in this bracket. This could be a really bad week for you. It could be Airborne, or it could be Group, or it depends on your roster. But there is a good chance you end up in a lot of trouble with that, and you may not get the 5 there. The summon events are almost always difficult to get in these, so you can kind of just assume that you won't get the majority of these. If you're not farming Myth Gear, Tales of the Smith can be really hard to do. But we do have some time to get to the Myth Gear stage, so definitely try to get yourself into red gear drop farming in the stages, I think 11 onwards in the gear raid, so that you can upgrade some gear. And besides that, the rest of it isn't too bad. I think maybe the Corridor of Glory or maybe one of the Awakening of Heroes could be quite tricky. So overall, I think there's a good odds of getting fusion shards from this event. My general advice at the end of it is just save stamina if you can. Be prepared to blow a lot of stamina. I'm probably going to withhold some of my stamina, especially leading up to the end of this week, just so I can have more stockpiled. Friday does begin with Summons and Brave Conquest and Awakening of Heroes. So yeah, it could be quite tricky. I would just suggest trying to save up some stamina potions and save up some fodder, save some gold as well, and do have some gear ready to upgrade for the Tales of the Smith that starts on the Sunday. But that's pretty much it for the event. I hope it helps. Best of luck getting her. I do think Isolde is worth it. Even just the epic lords are actually quite hard to summon, so it's definitely worth getting her in your roster just to have her for the option should you need it, and she is great in gear raid too. Anyway, that's it. Best of luck this week, guys. I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye-bye.